Hey guys, still here. Today in Wargame, a 3v3. And normally I would cover this from one perspective, but this time around I'm going to do it in neutral, because I think we have some newer players on both sides. And from both teams, I saw some things that I found interesting. We're in combat diplomacy, it's a 3v3, that means you got quite a lot of terrain to cover. This shoreline over here usually doesn't see too much action unless somebody really wants to make a play. Then you sometimes see units crossing this bridge, but this can be such a death trap, both because it has so little concealment, but also because once vehicles start dying up here, they start clogging up the bridge. And with that, other vehicles are going to have a far harder time passing it, and end up usually getting killed as well. Over here, of course, the fight in the town is, well, almost guaranteed at all times. You got quite a lot of these building blocks, and all of these units just keep slugging it out short range. This also makes it very unsuitable for anything much heavier than a fire support vehicle. Tanks are going to have a very hard time accurately getting a shot in. Well, sometimes they can do it between the buildings, but it's rare. So overall, you're seeing infantry, some IFVs, and maybe some light fire support vehicles. Now the guy who sent this in is Overlord. And let's see where Overlord is at. He's over here on the left, deploying a couple of units towards the town, but also deploying a couple of defensive recon units towards, I think, this area. Because keep in mind, this is a shallow river. It is perfectly amphibious, and since it is so small, it is very easy to quickly traverse, especially if you have those fast amphibious vehicles, which can do 50. You can drop off infantry on the other side, and you're back before the enemy even knows that you deployed something. So this is something that you do need to keep an eye on, and he's going, as far as I'm concerned, a little heavy on the recon. I think you could do that with 2 reconnaissance vehicles. Say deploy one there, maybe one there, and that would be enough, maybe even overkill. Having a sniper team up here, in this bush, would also work very, very well to just spot everything. But then again, the enemy team can also do that from the other side. Now over on the right, it's a mild defensive setup. I think that the guys didn't have that many points to spend. So we're starting with a KA of V90, K1 Nanasenshiki AA infantry, which I think is a bit of an unusual choice. I would want to have something slightly longer range, like an AA gun with 2800 meters, because the biggest threat, I'd say, over here is potentially a helicopter, which tries to scout and then tries to engage tanks that you deploy on that line. Some more ATGM infantry over here, but well, these are Japanese ATGMs, so respectfully, but they don't really have the range to do anything useful. Anyway, massive force deployment on the left. Red 4, of course, also has their own units coming in. They are, interestingly, starting out with an SU-24 and a Yak 141. This is the same player. That's a whole lot of code, but it's, let's call him Style. I don't really know if this is the right choice to go with, because having an SU-24 implies that you need their air defenses down, and that would imply that you're going to follow up with airstrikes or helicopters. I'm seeing neither. I'm seeing one whole Akula, but other than that, nothing. Maybe they're still waiting to follow up with bombers, maybe that's coming somewhere down the line, but at the moment, there's just nothing. Now, the SU-24 didn't get actually any to target. There was no radar-guided AA gun whatsoever. You can see that iMove over here lives up to his username. Comes in with a quick helo, well, semi-helo rush. A couple of Celtics, a cannon, and a couple of Panthers and Pirates to deploy some infantry. If you can make it to this side of the bridge quickly, you're going to get a nice foothold. But it is a foothold. You will need something to follow up with that. Now, he's also deployed some infantry over here. This is Overlord. He's deployed the infantry in here, but that does make him light on this end. And that's when Kiddo comes in, or what is that, Kid? Kaido. Kaido comes in with a couple of quad stacks of transports, which are all vomiting out Ranuko Yikiri. That's a little bit much for the Panzergrenadiers to chew off. Now, over here on the left, this is something I wanted to draw attention to. The guys have a couple of reconnaissance tanks, which is not a bad choice, but these things only have good optics. So I doubt that they can see much from over here. Similarly, blue probably can't see anything either. And that is because blue on this line does not have any recon. I think the KA of V90 is still moving into position, but still. In these positions, I would use different reconnaissance units with very good, potentially even exceptional optics. He has Conkers, he has a Wilk, this is an 85-point tank. He has a Command M1K. This is a big investment. It's not Conquest, it's just Destruction. So you're not really expecting an attack over here. I'm not sure why we are seeing a T-72 M1K up here. Then he has a ROM, which is a good anti-air unit, at least against helicopters. Planes, it's alright against 3.5Ks, it's okay. Nothing much here, and this is where red has nothing. Interestingly, they do know that something is up. Rilox is deploying a defense marker and saying, hey guys, this is not good. And what's even more peculiar is that Overlord has deployed infantry. The helicopter is just sitting there. And the infantry is not even moving. So I think he was busy managing his forces over here. Probably the, what were they? The Panzer Grenadiers that we saw earlier over there. And at the moment there's just not a whole lot going on. Now the Commando Marines are taking fire. So he has to get these into cover. But he must be managing something else. Now blue has completely lost this town. They do, however, still have their foothold. The Commando Para are still up here. Single Gazelle cannon over on the right. The Celtics are falling back. And red has, well, decent control over the town. I wouldn't go with quad stacks, though. Because blue probably has an idea where your infantry is. And this is making it very easy to hit all of them at the same time. Which makes them quite vulnerable. And seeing as they're not deploying a lot of units, I think that they're also not having that much of an income. So spread out your infantry a little more to make sure that they're not all getting hit. XA-185 rushes in, right into the welcoming arms of the Chasseur, which instantly take it out. And then for some reason, Host 77 left. First he surrendered and then he left. I don't know why, because I don't really see anything... Well, of course, at this point, he doesn't have any more units, but... Where was the guy? I think the game might have already transitioned his units to the other players. But sometimes you can still see that they're originally from a different owner. No idea. Anyway, it is now a 2v3. And at this point, it is quite hard to tell which team is winning. There's nothing going on here on the left. The Commander Marines are still taking fire. We got a scattering of blue 4 infantry in this zone. Red 4 infantry has, well, sort of control of this zone. We got blue 4 infantry over here. It's just a mess. Units are behind enemy lines on both sides. And that's quite unusual. Anyway, at this point, with Host 77 leaving... I think that Overlord suddenly has a lot more points available. And he just deploys a whole bunch of VAP with infantry inside. So we're probably going to see a lot more of the Chasseur. Actually, that is I move. Yeah, still, he could also be deploying Chasseur. Panzerjägeri are still in front. The Ranico have fallen back slightly and have split off into a group of 3 in a single section. And we got an ATGM unit coming up, but there's no recon. So this anti-tank unit, while still very capable at shorter range, will not really be able to use that maximum range of 2450. So it's going to get 6 shots, but only if it survives long enough to get 6 shots. Now Rilox is still aware that there is an enemy infantry team over here. He deploys an attack marker saying, guys, we need to do something about this. Still, nothing happens. Another very, very expensive investment from red. See, now the SU-24 makes a little bit more sense. But keep in mind, the guy had a Yak-141, which is, I think, 140. Then an SU-24, which is another 80. And then an SU-27M. This is a 200-point plane. And I think he is sending it out to go after the transports. No, he's sending it out on air patrol. There's the SU-24, and there... Wow, there's even a PU? What does this guy have? Air only. Okay, that is interesting. I like airborne decks, but I usually don't recommend using them in smaller team settings. Specifically for this reason. You don't have the points to go with anything ground-based. And these battles, especially the smaller ones, 3v3, 1v1, they're won on the ground, not in the air. So this guy, I think he went airborne deck. Although this one is pretty low veterancy. I don't really know why. Going airborne on a situation like this is pretty risky. Red pushes forward with a T-55 and immediately runs into all the AMXs which are standing by over there. Yeah, this is the problem that I have with the Chumat. It's it's short range, 2450. This Chumat should be over here. Because from over here you don't really have the range. You can probably hit to, well, maybe this bridge pillar over here. Just a rough estimate, maybe even less. At the very least, it's not enough. Move them a little bit more further forward. Get a better spotter. Because still, this is the only spotter that you have. If Red was doing an amphibious crossing over here, you probably wouldn't know. And moreover, we have a couple of Chugatas, which are standing guard on the left. If Red were to fly around with a couple of helicopters, they could in fact do so. And Chugatas might spot them, but they only have poor optics. Similarly though, Red has absolutely nothing defending their own flag, or their own capture zone. Sure, they got the one ROM over here, but Blue could easily fly in over here. Same thing is happening over this side. This CV is very vulnerable. This CV is quite vulnerable as well. You can see that they at least have, and they being Blue, have a couple of Celtics and a cannon and another cannon over here. So they'll be able to spot it, but Red doesn't. That's a lack of information that you got there, and a potential security hazard waiting to happen. Anyway, here comes the infantry from Blue. A couple of the VABs have already arrived, but there's still quite a column coming in. Fallschirmjäger 90. Those make short work of the remainder of the Panzeri. Now it is up to the anti-HGM team to try and stop some of the transports, and they are at least picking the right target. They're ignoring the Fuchs, and they're going directly for the VAB and killing the infantry inside. Couple more VABs deployed, and now the Chasseurs are going to have a pretty hard time crossing this open area over here. The Ranico are pretty well dug in. We got the Panzeri over here, and there's just nothing really that's defending or protecting the Chasseurs in any way from trying to cross this open area. So I would want to see, if I were Blue, for a little bit more fire support, because at this point you're making it pretty damn impossible for your Chasseurs to actually reach this building. So now we're getting some more support. AMXs, some machine gun fire. But this is where the Martyr 1 and the Martyr 2 would really shine. It doesn't need to be terribly expensive, and it immediately also fields any... holy shit. It immediately also fields you some infantry. I'd say those are better support units than the Milan in this case. The Milan also comes with the short-range ATGM, but, well, just sneeze in the general direction of this unit and it is gone. 3 points of armor, 10 hit points. It's not survivable. Speaking of not survivable, they have some AA, but it's too far in the back. It's almost like they were afraid of a helicopter rush, but then again, they would have a helicopter defense over here. And now we got 2 Avias coming in from Kiddo. And he's probably going to level the place, because these things each pack a 1500 kilogram bomb. This is going to really hurt Blue. Yeah, that's a couple of the transports dead. At least Blue got off lucky, because they were not hit in the infantry over here. They would have just completely eradicated the infantry. At least the Milans... Well, I know that a minute ago I said sneeze in their general direction and they die, but a 1500 kilogram bomb is apparently not heavy enough of a sneeze to actually kill them. I'm surprised that Red still hasn't dealt with this. Red, for some reason, deployed an attack marker here. They saw them coming in. Then they said, guys, we have infantry in here, and they're still not doing anything about it. I think at this point, Rilux is the only one who's really... No, he's over here. Ah, so it's only Kiddo who's fighting it out. Yep, it's the only player up here. And I think he might have been thinking that he couldn't get any units in here fast enough. So the only way that he saw to fix the situation was to go with the AVS. Which is not a bad plan, because it's a quick way to relieve pressure on your forces. But there's just not much left. Ranico, for some reason, have left the building. Maybe to, I don't know, try to fall back. And then the Fallschirmjäger came in, so they had to reconsider. Fallschirmjäger, though, are not actually moving into the building. Guys, building cover. See, it's all this weird stuff that I see happening. I think we might be dealing with a couple of newer players. Something else that I noticed. There's a T-72 M2 Wilk over here. This is a pretty heavy tank. 120 points. It's sitting quite far back. I'd deploy it over here. Or here in support, so that anything that comes rushing down this bridge is immediately going to get shot. First by the Conquerors and then by the tank. And I can still use the buildings here as a bit more cover to break line of sight of enemy AGGMs. This is a pretty big investment, considering that there is nothing going on here, and that your right flank is completely collapsing. So in this situation, don't buy the tank, just get more units to start a defense, maybe all the way back here, because this side is pretty much lost. There is so much, well, let's say Eurocorps infantry coming this way, that the Red 4 units have no chance of holding this line. Aito's falling back. What are you dropping on? This thing dropped cluster bombs. On enemy infantry. Okay. Enemy infantry, or infantry in general, cannot be hit by cluster bombs. Yes, it will shake them a little, and these guys weren't exactly in the hit zone. It's more like they got caught on the edge of it. This way, you're making it a little harder on the infantry to fight, because they're worried or even panicked if you have infantry of a lower veterancy. But it does absolutely nothing in the sense of damaging them. Now, before you're all sitting back at home as veteran players or elite players or whatever going, oh my fucking god, what are you doing? We all had to start somewhere. We all had to learn this game at some point. As much as some people would have you believe, they were not born with the skill to play Wargame Red Dragon, or any other game for that matter. So, get off your high horse, and instead of going, oh my god, stop showing replays of newer players, pitch in. Help these guys improve, because next time around they could be on your team. They could be the ones who are tasked with defending a flank, and it might be your flank, or it might be your flank that gets pressured if their flank falls. So instead of cracking down on them and going, shit, that was a really stupid move, advise them, help them, aid them. We all need to help each other out in this game, because there's so much to learn, so much to see, so many units to figure out. That's why I'm doing these replays. And sure enough, for the more advanced, more veteran players, these might not be the most interesting things. But don't focus too much on the gameplay, and shift yourself into the role of a teacher. What could you teach other players? What was your biggest mistake playing Wargame for the first couple of games? I've already mentioned this a couple times probably, but mine was not being aggressive enough. And that's what I see happening here. There's a whole build-up of forces. Over here you saw that initially Red had quite a few units which were just dug into the buildings, but had no real way of pushing forward. Blue was trying to do an offensive without fire support units. It's all of these little things that at some point, if you play long enough, will click. But you gotta make the mistakes first. You gotta figure out what does and does not work. So if you are a newer player, don't despair, because we all had to learn this game somehow. despite what some other Wargame players and certain members of the Wargame Reddit are going to tell you. It is it is not an inborn skill, this game. This is something you learn by mistake, by analyzing your own replays, by figuring out what works. And keep in mind, it's a game, guys. This is not some sort of serious life and death situation. This is not, oh crap, I fucked up my CPR and now somebody died. This is a game. Have fun with it. Experiment with it. You do this stuff to relax, not to get yourself all anxious about, oh damn, I'm a newer player, do I even dare to go into multiplayer? Try. Just try. It's the whole toddler response. At some point you started to learn how to walk. And at no point did your parents say, you know what, no, this walking thing isn't working out for you, just stop. No, just you kept going until you learned. And that's how I see Wargame Red Dragon. I still make stupid mistakes. And I still get punished for stupid mistakes. And I go, okay, well, that wasn't a good move. What could I do different next time? Maybe I didn't see that AA unit that shot down my Nighthawk. Maybe that risk-reward wasn't quite worth it. But whatever you do, just try and learn from it. Have fun with it. Figure out what you can do better next time. Speaking of, I wonder what he's dropping on this time. Here. See, this is a much better target. The cluster bombs are now going to hit the AMX-10 Milan. And with that, take out an HEGM threat that's happening over here. The thing is, though, it might not be necessary to take out this unit. Now, of course, I'm working with perfect information. I can see everything, and it's very easy to critique for me. So, let's switch to what Red could see. Red probably saw HEGMs flying out of this bush. And I think it is their Tunchas which are putting up a smoke screen over here, so that's a good play. They're blocking line of sight, and then they're hitting it with a cluster bomb. And they're going to get the kill on the transport. So yeah, that was a good play. That was neutralizing a threat to your transports as they're coming over the bridge. The question is, though, do you need to come over the bridge in the first place? Because your units, if you put them to fast move, will cross the bridge. But these are amphibious. So these don't necessarily need to use the bridge. And if you don't need to use the bridge, then move over slightly to here. Cross here. Unless Bluefor has infantry in here, and, well, you'll know soon enough, because you're going to be taking fire either even before you hit the water or just when you do. If there's no Bluefor infantry in here, then taking out an HGM over here is not even necessary, because it won't have line of sight through these forests. So try to figure out what other options your units can provide for you. SU-24 circling around. SU-27 fighting it out. Yeah, this is another mistake. I think the SU-27 was engaging the F4 or the F-104, and the SU-27, by doing so, darted way over Bluefor lines. Now, Bluefor doesn't even have any radar-guided anti-air, which for Red 4 is quite the windfall, but they still have Crotals, and these are also quite dangerous. Their anti-airplane range is only 26-25, so it's not great, but it is enough, especially if you fly directly over them. And then a Rafale came in to finish them off. So in this situation, if you're fighting with an SU-27, any variety of that matter, try to keep it slightly more towards your own area, your own lines. And at this point, Style surrendered and left. I think because he lost most or all of his planes. So that just leaves Rilux and Kiddo. Rilux, though... Yep. The game is about 14 minutes old. Rilux has scored 20 points. That's because Rilux's units are all the way over here. They're not doing anything. There's even a Tunguska out here, an 85-point Tunguska. There's an Osa. It's not a bad defensive line. Don't get me wrong, it's a good defensive position, but it's not where you need your units to be, because the fight's happening here. This flank is being pushed, and at this point, unless you start to relocate some of these units, yes, you will weaken your line over here, but unless you start to push some of these units this way, there is nothing to be had. Now, I might be wrong. Rillox might have left. I don't know. But I don't think so. I don't remember him leaving. I think Kiddo is still in there. And Kiddo is the one who was fighting in the town. Yeah, he's still deploying units. So now Rillox is trying to fight back. A couple of motor shoots in versus Commander Marine. They could win this. Especially against this group. But this group is a bit much. Also, this needs to be addressed. This forest might not seem like much, but it is actually quite important. Because if you have your red for infantry over here, you can spot. And if you have red for longer range ATGM infantry or ATGM vehicles, you can shoot anything that comes over this large plain. So you're using it as a sort of zoning tool. And let's say you have a reconnaissance unit over there and an ATGM over here. You can zone out a large area of this middle portion of the map. More importantly, you can also have anti-air parked in this forest, or on this ridgeline if they're longer range. And with that, you can shoot down enemy bombers as they're trying to push your forces further back. At the moment, blue has this advantage. Now, if blue really wanted to fuck with you, they could try and get some AA units over there. Unfortunately, the Crotals aren't amphibious, but the transports, the VABs, are. And the VABs have the capacity of just dropping off enemy anti-air infantry. So you could float a couple of VABs over here, put some Mistrals over there, and, well, any airplane that comes over is at least going to get popping flares. So, well, you'll know that something's up. You might get hit, and even a Mistral doesn't kill you. It will upset the pilots, making your unit, making your unit less effective. So make sure you clear out this forest. If you're red, this has to be yours. Blue, for some reason, was able to get in here and stay in here. It just didn't get pushed out at all. So make sure, red, don't allow them to be in here. Another Avia comes in from Kiddo. I think they have had quite enough of the Commander Marines. Yep, here comes the bomb. Look at the little bird. And smack. That's another 7 Commander Marines dead. They almost hit him squarely on top of the building where they're in. They even blew out the ground underneath the building. But that's just Wargame being silly as usual. Good hit. Unfortunately, nothing really to follow up with. I'm also seeing a distinct lack of reconnaissance from red. You could argue that they don't have the points and that it's not too useful though. Because at this point, they really need to hold on to this line. But they didn't hold on to this line. And that's why they're now getting ATGMs into the flank of vehicles which are trying to cross the bridge. So it's a little risky. And in the meanwhile, we also have Panthers over here. Well, they're blind. They got poor optics. But more importantly, the 2 AMXs that we saw in here, they're now pushing. Finally, Rillox joins the fight and starts to send a T-72 this way. But not before the AMX-10s have already taken out a mortar and a command unit over here. And that's when they basically just say, okay, done. You guys got it. GG. Or at least, I hope they said, even if you lose, you can still say GG. Not in World of Warships, though, because somebody is always going to get pissed off in your own team. Now, major victory for blue. Not so much of a major victory for red. Major defeat on their end. You can see that Rillox didn't get any kills, or barely any. And he also got very little in the sense of losses. This is because he was just not in this fight. He was defending the left flank, but if you see that the right flank is having a really hard time, because Kiddo was the only one who was holding on to that flank, and nobody else was actually doing anything there. Style was trying to provide air support, but airborne decks, especially if you go all planes on this map, and in a game composition which is this small, it just doesn't work out too well. It is really hard to play that correctly. So that is why, especially on a map like this, I would usually recommend a motorized deck, because that puts your infantry at quite an advantage, since it has better veterancy, and your motorized units can then quickly rush to the town and capture it, while supposedly a tank deck or maybe a general deck holds the left flank, and well, maybe a second motorized deck or a mechanized deck or a general deck supports you on that right flank. So you got quite a few options there. But at the very least, I would not recommend airplanes. If you want to go air, go 10v10. Because there, if one of the 10 players or even 2 of the 10 players go air, it is actually beneficial to the team. Because you're going to be shooting down bombers, you're going to be shooting down seed aircraft, you're going to be shooting down enemy fighters. You're opening up the skies for your own units from your own team to assist. Blue 4 did quite alright. You can see that host got a couple of kills and then surrendered and left. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe he had an emergency, maybe something was happening in chat, I don't know. Overlord, 760 versus 610, and iMove played a really good game, especially with that early quick rush with the helis to try and get across the river, where he stayed for the rest of the match, got 1,085 points and lost 630. Now, normally I would go after the kill-death ratio or the kill-death list, but since I was switching from player to player and from neutral to players, that system in Wargame replays just does not work. Now, let me close off this video with reiterating what I said previous. You all have to learn this game at some point. When I got into Wargame, that was back in the days of Ireland Battle, I played it like it was a Command and Conquer game. And an easy AI steamrolled me, because I just didn't have the units, I didn't have the unit composition. I thought, oh yeah, well, it's an easy AI, I have some experience with those strategy games, I got this. And the AI just went, no, you don't got this, go back to wherever you came from. It was an easy AI. AIs are far less intelligent than players. At some point, you're going to have to take the plunge and go into multiplayer. Yes, there might be teams which say, sorry, I don't want to play with you because you're a newer player. That's why I usually recommend going into 10v10s, just to get your feet wet, just to try some stuff. And if you don't play that well over there, you don't usually get punished that hard. Or set up a couple of smaller games. Set up a 2v2 and make sure you personally vet the players on the other side. If you are feeling really brave, you can set up a 2v2 lobby and let basically anybody in. And then know that you're going to lose. So just go into the game with a mindset of, okay, this is going to suck. I'm going to lose this, and that's okay, because then I can analyze the replay. And I can see what my units were doing, I can see what the enemy units were doing, and I can see how I can adapt to that next time. What sort of strategy could I come up with to fix that? What sort of gameplay could I imagine that would counter that strategy? Learn. Don't be afraid of learning, of making mistakes. Despite how toxic and dark this community can get, it's it's not all of them. There really are some good players on here. I have a couple of mine on my Discord, so if you want to join us for a couple of games, you're more than welcome to, even if you're a newer player. We can teach you the ropes, we can take you into some smaller games and just advise you on what you need to be doing. And to all the Wargame Red Dragon elitists who are currently going, oh my god, Stealth is teaching your players again. Yeah, I am. And somebody has to, because all you people seem to be able to do is go toxic on them and not teach them anything, but just criticize them. So I'd like to be more of a teacher, mentor. I'm not a perfect player by any stretch of the imagination, but I just try to help out where I can. Anyway, with that, end rant, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Any little bit helps. Down below in the description you can find a link to become a Patreon supporter. And perks include, for example, getting early intel on what videos I have coming up for the next week. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this 3v3 with a bit more constructive teaching commentary. And I shall see you guys next time in the next video.